Now let's bring you some more on that breaking news you see on your screen. Michael Schumacher retiring from Formula One. Nick Powell joins me in the studio. Nick, any surprise there?
None at all.
No.
The motor racing world has been agog with the news in the last few days that Schumacher would be likely to retire. He won the world title 7 times. He will continue to race this season for Ferrari. The season ends on October 27th at the Brazilian Grand Prix, and he's going to retire after that. But he's been a colossus, bestriding the sport and tasting plenty of champagne right through the 90s and into this century. He was, of course, accused of making the sport boring by winning so often. He is going to be replaced at Ferrari next season, and this again is no surprise, by Kimi Raikkonen, who was involved this afternoon in the Grand Prix for his current team. McLaren finished second to Schumacher, and it's absolutely typical of Michael Schumacher that he should win on the day that he was planning to announce his retirement, and indeed did so. So he will not be competing next season. The most successful Formula One driver of all time, leaving the sport at the end of this season on October the 22nd. That will be some Ferrari party in Brazil that day.
Plenty of champers then, I would think. Nick, thanks very much indeed. Now, today's top stories. Gordon Brown has denied claims that he plotted to oust Tony Blair. It follows newspaper reports that he met one of the rebel MPs the day before their letter was delivered to Number 10. He would welcome a leadership contest. The Prime Minister has held talks with the Palestinian President, Mahmoud Abbas, on the second day of his Middle East trip. He said the world should restore contacts with the group, agrees to form a unity government, renounces violence, and police in Manchester say the murder of 15-year-old Jesse James in Moss Side may have been a planned execution. Still to come, 5 years after the 9/11 attacks, we ask what progress is being made in the so-called war on terror. And on our website, you can see our Foreign Affairs editor Tim Marshall's special report on how the world has changed since 2001. Select from the menu. It's a video menu that is on the left of the screen.
Truly amazing color without stepping foot outside your door? Talk about home delivery. L'Oreal's Color Expert makes it happen.
Color Expert gives you 2 color services for truly multi-tonal hair color. 1, rich all-over color goes on. 2, with this unique wand, harmonizing highlights sweep in.
Multi-tonal color exactly where you want it. How you want it, when you want it, where you want it. One-tone color, our hair deserves so much more.
Color Expert has the UK's widest range of multi-tonal shades. Discover yours.
Because we're worth it.
It was love at first sight. The way he looked at me, I knew he was the one. Frankie gives me that same look every single morning. It's like he hasn't seen me in a year.
A love like this deserves Iams, with the essential vitamins, minerals and nutrients proven to help support your cat's immune system, so he can keep doing what he loves.
I can't get up without my furry alarm clock.
Iams, good for the immune system, good for life. And get the same healthy nutrition in delicious Iams pouches.
At 064 2121. See if they can sort out a loan for you too.
Every Ryder Cup has its heroes. Many have come from Ireland. Now, for the first time, the heroes are coming to Ireland. Europe versus the USA in a game of passion. Coming soon, the Ryder Cup with the Royal Bank of Scotland. Live on Sky Sports 1 and Sky Sports HD1. For subscription details, go to sky.com or call 08702 407 726.
Now, a little bit more on that not particularly surprising news. Michael Schumacher quitting Formula One. Nick, back with us again. Nick.
Yes, he's going to retire at the end of the season. That means after the Brazilian Grand Prix on the 22nd of October. Mike Rutherford, Formula One expert, joins me on the line. And absolutely typical of Michael Schumacher that he wins the race at Monza minutes before announcing his retirement.
Hello
Mike
there.
Rutherford, are you hearing me?
Yes, I am indeed.
Mike, I'm just saying it's typical of Michael Schumacher to win the race at Monza this afternoon just before he announces his retirement.
Well, you know, I mean, I was there. I'm feeling like an old man at the moment because I was there in Spa in Belgium in the 90s when Michael won his first race. I was at the post-race party when this up-and-coming young kid, who ironically was Martin Brundle's #2 driver, won his first race, and that was many years ago. And it's gone full circle, hasn't it? I think his final words must be, "We'll beat that somebody," and of course nobody ever will, I don't think.
He's taken some flack, and Ferrari have taken some flack for the way they've announced this in the immediate aftermath of a Grand Prix. Have they handled it well or badly, in your opinion?
Oh, well, I think hasn't it all added to the hype of the whole thing? I mean, the drama of it. I don't know. Was it the case that he was going to retire today, or wasn't it? We weren't quite sure, and I think it all added to the occasion. But you know, as somebody who's briefly met him and seen him in action and seen the human side of Michael Schumacher, as it were, I'm more intrigued at this moment about what he's going to do now, because I don't know about you, but I can see Michael Schumacher in a corporate suit, wearing a Ferrari tie, with a Ferrari briefcase, perhaps running the Ferrari team. And that's a question I put to the boss of Ferrari and Fiat, Luca de Montezemolo, a few years ago. You know, can you see Michael in that sort of role? And his answer was, "You make a very interesting point."
How upset will Luca de Montezemolo and the rest of the Ferrari bosses about losing Schumacher as a driver? Would they feel that his very best years are behind him and it is time to look to the future with Kimi Raikkonen?
Well, you know, do you remember the days when Nigel Mansell sort of retired from Formula One and he went off to Indy racing in America, and he showed the other half of the world how to do it? I mean, just because you retire, it doesn't mean to say you're not still a great driver. So I think they will have mixed feelings. I mean, this is not like a footballer whose legs has gone. You know, this is a guy that is super, super fit. I mean, one of those occasions I did see the human side of him was out in very late one night at the test track in Italy, when he was walking around, I kid you not, with lead weights on his crash helmet to strengthen his neck muscles. I mean, that's how dedicated he was at 10 o'clock at night. You know, heaven knows what he's like when he's, you know, working in office hours, as it were. I mean, the guy is super, super fit. He's the fittest bloke, probably, still, in the Formula One paddock. He's obviously got the talent. He's got that little thing called experience, which is pretty underrated, it seems to me, these days. And what's more, he knows every trick in the book, some of them a bit dirty as well. So he's still got it, and isn't it a shame that perhaps we won't be seeing it again? Or will we? Renault need a new driver. We've seen lots of people go into retirement and then come out of retirement. I just wonder if Michael Schumacher will be tempted back, not by the money, because he doesn't need it, and he gives a lot of his money away anyway, but he would just love the prospect, I think, of taking on Kimi Raikkonen at Ferrari in the future. And maybe that means we'll see Michael Schumacher, I'd put a fiver on it, in a Renault race car in the future, perhaps.
In the meantime, as he runs up to retirement, it's not going to be going away quietly, because he's now only 2 points behind Fernando Alonso, the current Renault world champion, after that win in Italy today. Do you expect him to clinch an 8th world title?
Well, I'm not a great one for crystal ball gazing, but I think it's fair to say the momentum is with Schumacher, isn't it? And the way the guy's luck works in his favour at all the right times. You know, if I put a fiver on Michael Schumacher, perhaps coming back in a year or two, driving for another team other than Ferrari, I'd certainly put slightly more on that, on him winning the championship this year. But, you know, like I said, wouldn't it be great if somehow Ferrari signed him up as perhaps a worldwide ambassador or something a bit more than that? I don't know. Perhaps there could be a chairman of Ferrari. Perhaps there could be a president of Ferrari. Perhaps that could be Michael Schumacher. Would help in the development of the road cars, could help in the, obviously with the Formula One side of the business, could help bring on new drivers. You know, we need somebody like Michael Schumacher very much involved in Formula One. We can't let the bloke walk away, and I certainly won't.
Assuming he is going for good in October as a driver, how much will he be missed as a driver?
Well, if you asked the likes of Fernando Alonso that, he'd say not at all, wouldn't he? But, you know, he's one of those guys that, you know, we all love him or hate him at certain times, and he has been... he has played dirty, he has played against the rules, but, you know, a lot of footballers, a lot of tennis players who have been bad boys, we really miss them when they go, don't we? You know, Alan Shearer wasn't squeaky clean, but I'd like to have him around still. John McEnroe wasn't exactly whiter than white, was he? But wouldn't it be great if we had a character like that in the tennis world today? A Gascoigne, for example, in football again.
Yeah.
You know, wouldn't it be great? You know, sometimes we don't like the cheating, and I use that word very, very carefully, but he has cheated in the past, and his fans, commentators, and fellow racers have accused him of that, and I think he has done that in the past. But, you know, I'd rather have Michael Schumacher in Formula One, occasionally getting up to a few dirty tricks, or is it sportsmanship, or is it sportsmanlike behaviour, than not involved in Formula One at all. And, you know, we haven't heard the last from this guy, believe me.
Indeed. Mike Rutherford, thanks very much indeed. We are just getting a statement from Michael Schumacher. He says, all these years in Formula One have been amazing, especially those spent alongside my friends in the Ferrari family. But soon my future will belong to my family, while I am happy to be still part of Ferrari. For now, what matters is this year's World Championship. And Luca Di Montezemolo, the Ferrari president, says, I've always said the decision to retire would be Michael's alone, but now the decision's been taken, I feel a sense of sadness. More sport for you in a few minutes' time. Alan?
See you then, Nick. Thanks very much indeed. 5 years ago tomorrow, America came under attack when 2 passenger jets were flown into the World Trade Center in New York. Another struck the Pentagon, and the 4th was brought down in Pennsylvania. The war on terror, which followed, and the Iraq War in particular, has been blamed by some for the radicalization of young British Muslims. Ashgar Bukhari runs the Muslim Public Affairs Committee, a pressure group which tries to increase the involvement of the young Muslim population in politics. This is his special report for Sky News.
There are 2 million Muslims in Britain. Many of us are very, very angry, but only some of us are prepared to do something about it. There's often been a violent Muslim reaction to Britain's foreign policy. It just never reached the shores of Britain. 9/11 changed all that. Bin Laden gave angry young Muslims a blueprint to bring about that change.
By flying planes into the Twin Towers, Bin Laden was sending a message that while most Muslim leaders have failed to challenge foreign policy, he had not.
Yet, there is another way. Involvement in the democratic process could give us an ethical foreign policy far more effectively than violence ever could. So how comes young Muslims don't know this? Do the mosque need reform? How many young people need to get involved in the mosque? Should the mosque stop terrorism? What can the mosque do to stop terrorism?
I run the Muslim Public Affairs Committee, which seeks to empower young Muslims.
Can the mosque actually do anything? Apart from speaking in a language we don't even understand.
As part of our work, we challenge the Muslim establishment to reform. I went to one of the largest mosques in the country to put this message directly to the Muslims themselves.
Do you think that young people should be involved in the mosque?
Yeah, to kick out the old people, man.
Kick out the old people?
Yeah, they waste the time. They waste the time.
I agree with you.
No, some of them, they don't even speak English. The youths are lost. We are losing the youth.
Of course, some Muslims are not so happy.
What's your message?
How many black people on the committee?
Nobody's complaining here, only you.
Many of our young people are angry about what's going on abroad, and as a result of that anger, some of them are turning to terrorism. Maybe we can, if we taught them how to make a change to that foreign policy by getting involved in the democratic process, if that mosque had taught us, we would be joining a political party instead of bombing somewhere. It's the mosque's job to teach us how we can make a change. Do you not think that's changed?
The mosque is a place for prayer.
And that's it. And that's it.
Don't try to politicize the whole thing.
Is that all the mosque is there for?
This is not a place for politics.
What has got to do with mosque?
All I'm saying is that
Muslim community is different. The mosque is different. Not every Muslim community comes to the mosque.
No wonder they don't, because they don't feel engaged with the mosque. How many young people are involved in the mosque?
You're doing a great job.
Because you're a brother.
Everything you're doing.
Thank you very, very much.
I just hope there's a lot more people like you.
The mosque was nothing more than an old boys' club for first-generation immigrants. Younger, British-born Muslims played no part in it. So the only institution that has the infrastructure to reach millions of Muslims is incapable or unwilling to do so. When younger Muslims do try to change the mosque, they are met with resistance.
If they're British-born and they can solve and teach young Muslims how to live in this country, why are the mosques not employing them?
One thing I know that is most of the people, ulama, they think that if they allow this, then they will lose their job.
It's political. The older imams simply don't want to let younger imams in simply because they'll lose their job. So nothing changes.
Yeah.
Until a younger generation is taught that democracy works and can bring about a peaceful change to our world, we will never see an end to young people feeling violence is the only way. Sadly, it seems the only people who could reach us and teach us this have failed us.
Now let's get a little more on that from Dr. Peter Newman, who's Director of the Centre for Defence Studies at King's College in London. Dr. Newman, very good afternoon to you. When we look at George Bush's declared war on terror since 9/11, that's 5 years ago, how much success would you say it's had?
Well, it's a very mixed balanced sheet. There were some initial successes in the sense that the training camps, the terrorist training camps in Afghanistan were eliminated. That was in late 2001. Of course, since then, there have been some setbacks. Iraq is not a success. It certainly hasn't contributed very much to finding and fighting terrorists. Osama bin Laden is still not caught, even though some would argue that the fact that he's on the run and that he's cut off from his ground soldiers is a success in itself.
But the terror attacks haven't stopped, particularly in Baghdad. We see attacks in Afghanistan. When you look at the theatres of conflict that have been at the forefront of this so-called war on terror, it doesn't seem much has changed.
Absolutely. Many people would even argue it's become worse, and certainly in the UK, we were told recently that there has been a 300% increase in the number of people who are suspected to be violent extremists. At the same time, it has to be said that here in Western Europe and in North America, we haven't seen the dozens of attacks that have sometimes been predicted. It has stayed relatively calm. The conflicts are in far-flung places, and maybe that should be counted also as a success, to be able to keep the terrorism at bay rather than bring it here.
There are some who say you have to, at some point and through whatever channels, talk to, negotiate to terrorists, but is there any conceivable basis for negotiation with those who don't have specific aims? Their aims are nebulous, and the foot soldiers are quite willing to die for their cause, whatever it may be.
It's certainly very, very difficult to conceive of a situation where Western governments would negotiate with Al-Qaeda. First of all, in the case of Northern Ireland, for example, we negotiated because the insurgents, the terrorists, were ready to negotiate. They were ready to sit down at the table, and they actually had political demands that you could negotiate about. That is not the case in the case of Al-Qaeda. In order for a negotiation to be effective, to be successful, to take place, you need two who are willing to negotiate. I don't see at this point in time, and for the foreseeable future, how Al-Qaeda would actually be willing to negotiate, what they would negotiate about, and what they would actually represent.
The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is often brought up as one of the key problems that needs to be resolved. Do you think if that could be resolved, if there were to be a Palestinian state, as according to the roadmap there should have been last year, that would diffuse some of Al-Qaeda's reason and their rationale for attacking?
I think it's always important to distinguish between the leaders and the foot soldiers. I think the leaders, people like bin Laden, people like al-Zawahiri, his deputy, it would make no difference at all to their rationale and to the reasons why they are engaging in this struggle. But, however, it would be very important in terms of reducing the number of foot soldiers, reducing the popularity and the tacit acceptance with which people like bin Laden are operating. It would drain their support quite significantly, but obviously it's not as easy as it is to say that it would be a good idea.
Very grateful for your time, Dr. Peter Newman. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And don't forget, later today, James Rubin will be presenting a special programme for Sky News to mark the 5th anniversary of 9/11. James' guests include the former Spanish Prime Minister, José María Aznar, James Woolsey, the former head of the CIA, and David Frum, President Bush's speechwriter, who coined the term axis of evil. That's from 8 till 10 this evening here on Sky News. Now to the sport. Full details with Nick.
Thanks, Rich. Indeed, it was a busy afternoon already in the sporting world before the greatest driver in the history of Formula One, Michael Schumacher, announced in the last half hour that he's retiring at the end of the season. He did so moments after winning the Italian Grand Prix at Monza. The Ferrari of the 7 times world champion finished ahead of the McLaren of Kimi Raikkonen, who had started on pole. Raikkonen will replace Schumacher at Ferrari next season alongside the current number 2 Felipe Massa. As for his final season, Schumacher's now just 2 points behind the Renault of world champion Fernando Alonso, who suffered a rare engine failure. We will have more reaction to that story throughout the afternoon here on Sky News. It's been a good day for England's cricketers so far. They're chasing 155 to win the final one-day international and level the series against Pakistan. They are 24 for 1 so far in the 4th over.
England won the toss, and after Broad and Lewis had opened the bowling, Saj Mahmood quickly had the bails off. Unfortunately, while he was bowling, the delivery ruled out by umpire Ian Gould. The same bowler was then involved in the run-out of Farhat for 15 after an opening stand of 43. But the run-out was down to Chris Reed.
Very good work by Chris Reed, and this is a close call. Out.
The scene was now set for a 3D. Pakistan fans were expecting fireworks. What they saw was a slog and just a couple of runs.
Just like that, but Lewis strikes.
Then Mahmood had Hafiz playing on for just 18. Mahmood's figures were excellent, 2 for 24, and they included a quality victim, Mohammed Yusuf for 11, Strauss the catcher. Mahmood thought he had Yunus Khan as well. The question was, had it carried to Reed? The umpires told Reed it hadn't, and it seemed they were right, just about. Very next ball, though, Collingwood trapped Inzamam for a couple. And in his 100th one-day international, a 50th wicket for Collingwood, Razak for just 5. Michael Yardley was quickly in on the act as well. No doubts about this Reed catch. Akmal out for 4. And as the innings subsided, there were 2 wickets for Jamie Dalrymple, Rana Naveed for 8 and Yunus Khan for 47. That meant a feeble target of 155 for openers Joyce and Strauss to get stuck into, a target that didn't seem enough. Jeremy Langdon, Sky News.
And here is the one England wicket that's fallen so far. Ed Joyce not having a very successful time as England flourish. Mohammed Asif bowling him for 8, but England 34 for 1 now with the captain Andrew Strauss on 22 not out. Half-time at Tannadice in the Scottish Premier League. Dundee United holding Hibs so far. Dundee United reviving pretty well in the last few weeks. And in the Championship this afternoon, it's Leeds against Wolves. Still no score. The match is live on Sky Sports 1. There are 13 minutes to go. Still to come. Also Sky Sports 1. West Ham against Aston Villa. And possible debuts for the 2 Argentinians, Carlos Tevez and Javier Mascherano. Although Mascherano much the more likely, we're told, to play that match at Upton Park in just over an hour. Bradley Dredge is firmly on course for victory at the European Masters this afternoon. The Welshman has picked up 5 shots to go to 18 under par. He is 9 shots clear of the field. Dredge looking for a first European tournament victory in 3 years. Roger Federer will become the first player to win 3 US Opens and 3 Wimbledons in successive years tonight if he beats Andy Roddick. That's in the final in New York. Figures published this year show Federer earns less than Maria Sharapova, even though she had only won 1 Grand Slam title. Well, now she has 2 after a straight sets win over Justine Henin-Ardenne at the US Open in the early hours of the morning our time, and it meant a lot. 30 years older, another winner, Martina Navratilova, winning the mixed doubles for her 59th Grand Slam title.
It's just nice to go on and win. You know, I could have just kept playing until I won 8 tournaments somewhere, but this definitely puts more pressure on when you say this is your last event, and every match you play might be your last one. That was weird, but now that I knew this was my last one, I was as relaxed as I've ever been. It was amazing. I felt so calm all day.
The world champion Valentino Rossi has won the Malaysian MotoGP. The Yamaha rider beat fellow Italian Loris Capirossi at Sepang. Rossi making his decisive move on the final lap. More sport in the next hour, and the red button will take you to Sky News Active, choice of 8 mini-screens.
Uncle Ben's Sweet and Sour is the nation's favourite, so invite the world to dinner with Uncle Ben's sauces.
Introducing our latest breakthrough, new Finish 5-in-1, the only dishwashing tablet with added power boost action to help boost its cleaning power on meaty stains. Way ahead of the second best-selling competitor tab, new Finish 5-in-1 for outstanding cleaning power.
At Hoover, we offer you a choice of 8, 12 or 15 place settings. When it comes to detergent, we only recommend 1.
Looking for a more satisfying career, a job that offers real freedom? Then become a driving instructor with the Instructor College. You don't have to worry about qualifications. If you've got a driving license, that's all you need to start your instructor training. You can learn around your current job or family commitments, and once you've qualified, you're free to choose your own flexible working hours. So leave your 9-to-5 routine, become your own boss, and enjoy the security of a guaranteed placement scheme with earnings of up to £30,000 a year, plus a fully maintained car. Free phone the Instructor College now on 0500 17 0017. We're waiting to take your call.
16 leaders in one place at one time. One chance to get inside the minds of the world's most inspirational leaders. Meet globally renowned leaders, share their visions, and find out the strategies behind the art of great leadership. Join them in a unique event. Leaders in London Summit, November the 28th until December the 1st, 2006, for the ultimate leadership experience. Book before the 29th of September and save up to £400.
Pretty woman, walking down the street. Pretty woman, the kind I like to meet. Pretty woman, I don't believe you, you're not the truth. No one can look as good as you. Mercy, pretty woman.
When it comes to must-haves, George have it all. Now at Asda, more for you for less.
Pretty woman.
My dog and I appreciate the finer things in life, so I feed him new Caesar pouches, which are gently cooked to bring out the refined flavour he loves.
The clash of the Titans.
Manchester United versus Celtic.
How about that?
The first big clash from a new season in the UEFA Champions League, and it's live only on Sky Sports.
High tension, high drama.
Make sure you don't miss this and Arsenal's opening game in Hamburg.
Henry, Thierry Henry.
For subscription details, call 08702 407 726 or go to sky.com.
You're watching Sky News. Here's what's coming up in our next hour. Who's your money on? We'll get the bookies' view on who will replace Tony Blair.
War on terror. Have 5 years of fighting made the world a safer place?
And on the Sky News website, Dame Helen Mirren is honoured for a majestic performance.
Rain. As seen by Qatar Airways passengers, your 5-star airline.
This is a snapshot of the way the skies look across Britain and Ireland right at the moment. Beautifully clear across many of these areas. Temperatures reaching around 25 degrees Celsius, 77 degrees Fahrenheit. Out towards the west, more in the way of cloud and indeed some patchy rain. Now, this isn't actually the main rain event. That's for tomorrow. But, of course, all the cloud there is making things a little hazy, even though it is still warm. Now, the way the skies got this way, we've been seeing a steady inpouring of cloud from the west, and indeed there is a fairly vigorous system out there, but it's not making its way in towards us yet. So still more sunshine to come, certainly for the rest of the day. Some places could see temperatures up to around 28 degrees Celsius. That's 82 degrees Fahrenheit, not at all bad for the middle of September. Overnight tonight, though, we do start to see the cloud thicken from the west, and that's going to bring rain in across parts of Ireland, western parts of Scotland too. As we start off on Monday, I still think eastern parts of Scotland are going to be quite bright. Mist and fog elsewhere, that should clear quite rapidly. An increase of cloud across much of Wales and the southwest, but certainly still plenty of sunshine and high temperatures for central and eastern parts.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Good afternoon, you're watching Sky News on Sunday the 10th of September. The top stories. Brown denies he was behind Labour plot, but says he would welcome a leadership contest.
Blair leaves domestic strife behind to push for peace in the Middle East. We're live to Jerusalem after the Prime Minister's talks with the Palestinian President earlier today.
A mother pays tribute to a 15-year-old shot dead in Mossad.
And 5 years after 9/11, looking back on how the war on terror has changed the world.
In sport this afternoon, going out with a bang, Michael Schumacher wins the Italian Grand Prix at Monza and then announces his retirement. And still on target, England lost an early wicket that need just 110 to win against Pakistan. Sport at 20 past and 2:15.
Live from the Sky News Centre, this is Sky News with Alan King and Samantha Simmons.
Gordon Brown has hit back at accusations that he was involved in a plot to oust Tony Blair after newspaper reports that he met one of the rebel MPs the day before their letter was delivered to Number 10.
Following a week of Labour infighting, Mr Brown welcomed the prospect of a contest for the leadership, saying an election would be good for the party.
Well, the Prime Minister has left domestic difficulties behind him to continue his Middle East tour, with talks in Ramallah with the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas.
The road to peace in this region is a notoriously rocky one, but after the week Tony Blair has suffered at the hands of his party, this might feel like getting away from it all. Journalists being journalists, though, domestic politics wasn't forgotten altogether.
Can you say, hand on heart, you are 100% convinced that Gordon Brown had nothing to do with the attempt to unseat you?
Of course, but I do want to say that I think it honestly is inappropriate. I mean, you'll have chances to ask me questions about this many, many times, but I really want to concentrate on Palestine today, but of course I accept the assurances that have been given.
His advisers will have been keeping a close eye on events at home, and there may have been some reassurance to see a semblance of discipline breaking out within Labour ranks. The Chancellor Gordon Brown is portrayed by some as plotter-in-chief, but in an interview he denied there was anything suspicious about his meeting Tom Watson, signatory to the letter calling on the Prime Minister to step down just a day before he resigned from his ministerial job.
If anybody had asked me about the contents of that letter, I would have said it was completely ill-advised. And the reason is this. Some people want to tell Tony Blair when he should finally